Hey, it's Chris. Something off my chest here at the beginning. Crowdfunding round up. Second one of 2025. You know what? You know what we need? We need more. This game is an insert adjective, insert verb, something, something adjective that plays in under X amount of minutes, hours, blah, 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 funded. Yay! We're back to the stupid preview quotes that mean zero, that people are getting paid a ton of money for, that I'm jealous of. But that's not the reason I'm angsty about it, because it just doesn't help you figure out whether or not the game is good. These quotes don't say, yeah, this game is actually good. No, generic insert adjectives of what the game is like that you get from the Board Game Geek description, and then it tells you something other generic that doesn't actually say whether or not those mechanics that you just mentioned are actually good in the first place or not. And definitely doesn't tell you whether or not it's right for you, or who this is right for, or who this isn't right for, apart from generic cliche jisms. I don't know where I'm going with this. Rant over. Games. Let's do it. Plus, you know, if you like this, I have more on the Patreon. Of course, I'm not talking about any game in particular, so don't go looking or, you know, thinking that I'm throwing shit at something specific or just the general trend of crowdfunding over the last years. Now, on to the games. Darwin's Journey, Oceania expansion. If some is good, more is better. Why come up with new things? We can make you want to FOMO on the stuff you already have. Time. Again, not speaking about Darwin's Journey, or am I? Wink, wink, nod, nod. You know what? Okay, Darwin's Journey. I like this. It's giving you more of Darwin's Journey, right? Oceania, more creatures, more hazards, more ways to lose points. And don't worry, if you have a game board of the original that's torn, broken, or you just don't like the appearance of it, this expansion will give you a brand new main board, so you can sub out all of those parts of things that you may not like. The interesting part of this is you're going to be going up with hazards in this. I don't think there are hazards in the base game. Truth be told, not as familiar with the base game of this game as I am with others on crowdfunding. It is too heavy for me, it is too long for me, and it is too smart for me. So what you're doing, though, is a new game experience. They say 16 unique specimens, but these specimens and part of these cards that are going to be unique in this is we're going to have hazard icons. And as you go the hazard icons, you mark up on your hazard track. And if you get too far on your hazard track, i.e. like more than 5 of them, you just frickin' lose victory points. Are you okay with that, with your heavy worker placement? You get the innovation and you get the discovery, but you're going to also pay the penalty. But other people that are researching, sometimes I think, if I'm reading this correctly in the rulebook, that same thing later on, they don't take the hazard penalty. But that's not only exploration, that's also the research of the specimens. You're getting a post office, you're getting a university, and you're getting more campsites and more. There's the hazard track, right? Increase the difficulty of that exploration and that discovery. The highest level receives a one-time bonus, though, as well. Risk, reward, dynamic. You want the collector's edition? You want to pay over $100 for that? Well, you can as well. What is the full bundle giving you? Let's actually check. I'm curious. Whoa! $200 for this heavy deluxified Euro worker placement style things. However, I'm cutting both ways in this one. I'm not throwing shade. I like to be a little bit facetious about the ridiculousness of our over-consumerism hobby in general. But unlike a lot of other campaigns, unlike a lot of other pages, I'm going to give kudos for freaking kudos is due. You see this? You see this? This is at the top of the mother freaking page. Oh, what's new? Why should you get it? Boom, we put it at the top. I like that a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I like it. Maybe critiquing elsewhere. But you know what? As I'm saying with all of the big funding projects, if you're raising a lot of money, if you're one of my favorites, I'm going to love on you. I'm also at the same time with some of these going to be more critical. With great power comes great responsibility. With great power in the hobby, with great fundraising capabilities, I'm going to be more critical of how you choose to allocate that and how you benefit our hobby. Boom. There's your boy. Anyway, that's all I got, right? There's a little bit of exclusives. Founders exclusives. Not Kickstarter, not GameFound, not crowdfunding, but founders with new dual layer player boards, right? And new solo boards. Ooh. Stretch goals, you know, you might get that down there. Where are these actually? Let's check. Stretch goals. Okay, little gameplay content. It's very similar to the first campaign as well. So do you need it if you're already getting like 2 expansions with this? Again, I've covered this previously. I've covered this elsewhere. It's one thing if you get 8 promos out of a 64 card deck. That is a massive chunk of content that you're missing. If you are looking at this and saying these are 2 cards in my 300 card deck, well then, maybe you don't need to FOMO and worry about the deluxeified versions of them, including the extra gameplay content. I'm ranted out with this one. I think that if you're looking at this game, you're the target audience. At the same time, as I've heard people comment and read many comments on this, because I may not have the practical game in front of me experience with these sorts of things, but reading through and digesting as much information I can at the same time, if you have the base game in the first expansion, if you haven't played it 2 dozen times, this is unnecessary whatsoever, right? Like most of our superfluous hobby expansions in general. But I digress. Oh, he's in a good mood this week, folks. And all the new people are like, click, close that video. But that's, you know, kind of what you need to think about. Do you have enough base game plays? Is this the best Euro for you that came out of that year? And I don't know, right? This was a significant delay between the first crowdfunding campaign and the time it delivered. Not in a super bad way, but there were many other Euros that came after it that surpassed it, that gave equivalent experiences that you got sooner that are slightly more accessible. So how heavy do you need your heavies to be? Darwin's Journey giving you more. Speaking of more, Everdell Silverfrost. I was actually just planning on covering this at the news video that I'll do bi-monthly, it seems like right now, because it just was announced after the news video earlier this month. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, what's up with this? And they said, hey, this is the deal. Although they didn't tell me the launch date, which, there you go. So you don't need to go check it out in my news video. It's all right here. It's Everdell Silverfrost. They're exploding like Far Shore, another standalone game in the Everdell line of things. I was going to say trilogy, but I don't think it's going to be a trilogy, right? Just like I said with Nemesis, just like Tainted Grail, just like Zombicide, if it makes you the monies, it's going to come back and it's making the monies. So this is a little bit more, they say complicated, not complicated. I don't know why I use that word. This is a little bit more strategic, a little bit more of an element upgrade, if you will, from a mechanical standpoint of the original Everdell, because it's including the snow mechanic and the forge mechanic, the beacon icons, as well as fire. Because if your places have snow on them, you're going to have fire to get the snow rid of. You're also going to have chimneys, which are going to be one-off abilities that you can gather as the rounds progress to essentially allow you to play a critter that you may not otherwise able to be played with the resource that you have, and instead using said fire as well. The beacon icon is going to be another thing you can go into as a worker placement spot that can invite legendary mythical creatures from other realms or countries or nearby whatever landscapes that are available that will aid the person that summons them. Forges, again, in a different way, allowing you to discard cards in order to gather resources. Otherwise, you take your one of 3 different actions on your worker placement, play a card, or along those lines, resource gathering on a turn-by-turn basis through a seasonal aspiration game until you just can't go anymore as you're building your city, your tableau, and everything else along the way. Do you want to over-deluxify it? You know, I like the idea of this. The practicality of it never gets me. You know, it's one of those where if I get it in a trade, if I get it on there as a review copy, I no problem with the upgraded components. But the practicality of that from a space time setup situation is more of my issue nowadays. Looks beautiful. I just, you know, the 2D thing I'm also just as happy with sometimes, right? It's more the resource tokens that actually are probably the benefit. But again, everything I just said is on there. You can, ooh, a bear plushie. Oh, sorry, squirrel. Anyway, but this is what you're getting elsewise of this along the way. The wooden mountain is actually available separate if you just want to piecemeal it. The upgrade pack, the essentials upgrade pack. So yeah, that's everything. It's going to be a question mark of whether or not it's a good price or not from Starling Games and Tabletop Tycoon, because $40 is probably that push even mark, especially if you're overseas. That might be a better. But $69, again, it's going to be pushies, you know, later campaign, another year or two, you know, if you want to wait that much and save $20 on a game or a combination set of this one, Far Shore, and whatever one comes next, you can do that. But is it something that you can do, right? So that's what you got to think. Expanded worldwide shipping, and they're going almost everywhere. Taxes, U.S. sales tax, okay, great. But there you go, $300,000 Everdell Silverfrost. Give it a look-see. Tell them Liege sent you. Sorry, I just had to wonder about patent and copyright infringement there. Does that look like any popular character you've ever seen? Next. So then that leads us hopping back over to Yomi here. You didn't watch my video, but I covered it earlier this week. Yomi's just a fantastic fighting card game, folks, and they're coming back with a second edition where you do the paper, scissors, rock, blizzard, Spock thing, and you incorporate a gem that is asymmetric, one of 6, at least in the copy I had, that you incorporate about 5 of those cards into your deck or utilize as a one-time ability sitting out with your character, and it just gives you tons of asymmetric characters, right? It's been on Steam for like over a year, probably more than that at this point, so there's plenty of reviews out there of how it plays. It's been basically play tested and smoothed and upgraded and errated all along the way. So I mean, the biggest issue, and that's what I said in my video, is what's price point going to be, because this is a game that you have to love, because you know, when you've got the other contemporaries out there like your Battlecons, like your Exceeds, or anything along those lines, or Summoner Wars even, where you've got the asymmetry and going head to head, and you can get 6 factions of, say, a Summoner Wars in a box for $40 or $50. You know, when you've got a gameplay all in here for $225, that's a freaking metric ton. But it's giving you 22, right? Okay, 8 gems. Okay, 8 gems total. Solo, co-op. I play these head to head. I like the idea of solo and co-op. Solo is basically the same as co-op. You're going up against a boss based on a die roll of rows and grids that are going to determine the action of that boss that you're fighting. But I mean, 22 is a lot. So that would be about $55 each if you divide it by 4. So $55 for each of the core boxes for Summoner Wars, if you can get 4 different core boxes in that regard. So it's not completely, you know, significantly more priced. It's just if you get it all, it's higher priced, because the 2-player set is going to be $25 again, which is more expensive, and the 10-player character, again, you know, if you split that in half, that's 5 characters each box. Summoner Wars about that, you know, $50 versus $40. Okay, I mean, it's not that bad priced when you look at it isolated just as one game. I think people don't always put the value into card only games, and that's maybe a you thing rather than a me thing, because again, we see plenty of these indie publisher designers. It's just like what Chicago 68 from last year, from one of the small companies that charged $68 for a card driven game from an indie designer. You see the splatter games that go for $100, that, you know, again, say what you will. And so I don't look at this as any different than those. But the priority in our hobby seems to be that I can justify $100 for a bunch of plastic, but I cannot justify $100 for cards. I can justify $100 for coins and dual layer player boards, but I can't justify it for, you know, whatever, right? Insert your whatever. So that's my only issue. But if this game isn't for you, you got to be sure that you love the core gameplay loop of any of these that you're paying triple digits for nowadays, period. And I mean, you know, if you're paying triple digits, 100 is something. Right? Okay, because we've seen the deluxeification inflation overall in the hobby. You're breaking the 200, you're breaking the 150 even. You better freaking love it. And, you know, this is my type of thing. I have a type. This is my type. And I'm okay with saying that. At the same time, this is not one that you know, sort of whet your appetite with, or that you taste test, if you will. You dip your toes in. And you need to love the simultaneous lay down, reveal, see who's faster, see who played the paper, scissors, rock better combo chain up your character, get out of jail. It doesn't have too many keywords. I'm not sure all the characters, right? I only had, I think, like 10 of them in my set, so I didn't get to try them out. But I mean, this is the cool thing, right? You find one that's right for you, and that's also the problem when you buy 22, is you'll probably like 2 or 3 of them more than anything else. So that's what you got to contend with. That's what you got to think about. And I mean, that's why, you know, you're going to look at this top funder number and you're going to say 270 people, 70 grand. 70 grand for a card-based only fighting card game. This is an incredibly niche game, just like Dexterity, just like Kids game, just like Abstracts on crowdfunding. So if you take it out of the, you know, grass is greener, I'm looking over the shoulder of the miniature driven and the deluxe, you know, whatever Euro worker placement games, this is still really good, but it may not be good for you. So that's what you have to think about. Speaking of niche within a niche, based on the iconic PC series Masters of Orion, and Astra from Archon Studio, $640,000. And speaking of heavy miniature-driven games that you can spend lifestyle, you know, buku bucks on, well, you can do that, and now you don't need to try your Twilight Imperium or your Eclipse. You can do it in the form of Master of Orion, right? Should I join the Dice Tower? Just kidding. Dice Tower doesn't even know I exist. They would never ask me. Anyway, sorry. I don't know how I get on that tangent. The things that pop into my brain during videos, totally all unscripted. That's what you get for this channel. But it's a strategy, space exploration conquest and deception. We're leaving that in there. 1 to 4 players, 3 if you're lucky, probably more like 4 to 5 hours. I love that content, huge. Okay, playing into that there tongue-in-cheek, you get some star bonus points as well. But don't worry, you can use your stretch pay. Okay, military victory, diplomatic victory, sabotage, slow down. You know, how does this compare though to something else out there? I mean, we covered the Twilight Imperiums, we covered the Eclipses. How does this compare to like Eve or Stellaris, who are still MIA? And, you know, you've spent probably, again, if you have a type, this type of thing on as the 4X, explode, expand, exploit, exterminate, exterminate. Anyway, sorry. Doctor Who, I told you it was going to be one of those videos at the beginning. If you didn't know it was going to be one of those videos with how I started off with a cold open, that's on you, and I love you for staying around and staying with me in the first place. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Down below, mid-video campaign plug for a Patreon. I'm trying to figure out how to do paid content, and so I need to figure out how to price, you know, ads and things like that, and just, you know, whatever sponsorship. Anyway, sorry. Galaxy's worth of components, deep space technology, made in the E-frickin-U, Poland, baby. So what are you actually doing though? You're going around, you're exploring the planets, jumping from point to point, hyperlanes allowing you to travel your fleet. Galaxy created, homeworld and choice of your systems, and you're going to use these cards that are going to be driven from your hand to perform your various actions that are available to you, upgrading your tech tree, and exploring the wonders of the universe. A lot of iconography, sort of a Voidfall meets Eclipse, if you will. Do you want to play tall or wide or different routes and, you know, all of these things? And I have no idea, right? Speaking of everything else, there's your price point. $200 because you can't get the core pledge because you're a completionist. So what are you getting though for that extra, you know, what is that, like $70 here? The stretch goals and 3 chosen expansions. GNN expansion, the Galactic Council expansion, and the Antaran's Revenge expansion. Choose any 3 of 3? What the? Okay, guess one of these other pledge levels maybe allows you to choose 1. So if you get all 3, it's additional, $80. If you get just one of them, it's $30. Okay, that's how they're doing that. 1, 2, or 3. Okay, well, there you go. Get your pick, a la mode, however you so choose. I know. There's someone down in the comment section getting ready to type. He said a la mode again instead of a la carte. You know what? It rolls off the tongue easier. This is all the stuff you're getting, though. 3 rule books. I'm not covering the rules on this one. Maybe I'll do a don't you back or don't you back. Gosh, this is going fantastic. Should you back? I will do maybe a should you back if this breaks $1 million, and then I will break down the rule book for you of your asymmetric factions, your Star Trek Ascendancy style vibes, 283 models. Holy balls. When is this going to be delivered? 2027? Is that what they said? They're all scrolling back up to see if I'm right. Just kidding. It is going to be delivered in, when does this say? That doesn't say? Okay, Archon. What do you got going on here? When is this going to be delivered? I don't see it. Is this one of those where vestige, where they put it in the FAQ and don't actually tell you on the page again? I'll look later. We'll find this out. They break down all your little modules, all your little content stuff. You still don't really have a clue how any of this plays. You don't have a clue how this mechanics in terms of the expansion stuff is going to be added. Admirals and governors are there. You don't even know what the main characters of the main ships do in the differentiations. So why would you want minor civilizations and 3 more unique empires to go with the 6 or 7 that are there, as well as the Galactic Council mode with a whole new 4th rule book and 5th rule book and 6th rule book here. Again, another soul faction? Okay. Huge galaxy mode. So in case you don't have your 12 by 12 table filled up with board games already with this size game, you can make your board game table even bigger and get your 15 by 15 out and have that happen. So, well, there you go, right? 2 of the biggest channels out there seem to be loving it. So take that for what you will. 3 even. So don't listen to anything I said. And if you are a spacefaring 4X person, this is the latest on your radar, and you can collect them all just like the Pokemons. I got nothing, folks. But again, like, this has to be right for you. Do you have the group to play this? Do you have the bandwidth to play this? Do you have the, well, just repeated play, if you will? The rulebook is right here, so you can try it on Tabletop Simulator. So I love that fact as well. Again, being critical, but I love the fact that you can play it. If you're really that interested in it, you probably should be trying this out before you're spending $300. Oh, and the reason I'm not going down and breaking down the rulebook for you any further or watching those review videos and give you a regurgitated version of things, because the rulebook here, as you can see, is 56 freaking pages. And that's a lot of stuff. So can you learn another 60-page rulebook game? Is that, bandwidth, everything else along those lines yours? I mean, again, people have a type, and like Minds Fighting Card Games, 3,000 peoples have this as their type as well. And again, I kind of wonder how much nostalgia based on that PC game. So give it a look-see. Yep, went over to the FAQ, couldn't find it. So I'm sure it's on the page somewhere else, and someone will let me know in the comment section down below. And next one here, we have Jade Board Game Table Redux. And I'm covering this because it's got 21 people, $32,000. And they failed their last campaign. It didn't successfully get enough money because they said they needed a $250,000 funding goal and they needed 200 backers doing it. And so they came back and there were some comparisons. There were some comments about like warranty stuff, question marks, where it was being made, question marks, and just whether or not it was going to be covered and how can you do that and can you guarantee stuff and what if it comes bad and you're not going to guarantee it, or how can you guarantee it, and not have people just complain because, board game tables are all over the place, and can you actually get good quality control? So I have no idea. But this is another situation where you just kind of go, okay, I've seen a lot of this stuff very similar elsewhere. Why would I get this over someone else? Why would I get this over an established company? Why would I crowdfund a table in the first place without some of those guarantees? Why would I crowdfund furniture anyway? Because I don't know the size, the fit, the shape, the model of what it's going to look like. Because when you do couch surfing and you get a new couch in your house or anything along those lines, a chair, whatever it may be, you go and you try it out because you look at that couch sometimes and you go, oh, wow, this is really comfortable and this really fits well. Oh, and then you go and sit down in it. It looks great and it feels terrible, right? Every single freaking time. So would you be willing to do this with furniture sight unseen online? Woo, I'm not so sure, but again, that's kind of the question mark, especially with all the established retail side of things. Question mark, hopefully get a good deal. There you go. Next up, Ion Core, thematic sandbox game set in a post-apocalyptic dystopian world. Humanity is driven to piracy. Basically, it's like 7 Seas with a procedurally generated hex-based map where you're going to be taking actions going along the huge board, exploring these tiles, uncovering them, and then seeing what is in store as monsters and events are ripped up on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis as you, kind of do everything that you can do in a pick-up-and-deliver sandbox explorative style with some head-to-head take that. You have these player boards down here below that are made up of 3 different sections, the left side being your ship that you can upgrade, the middle being your crew and the amount of crew that you can actually have, and then the right side being the tech tree that you're slowly going to unlock and progress through. It's Euro style action point system mechanisms, pick up and deliver, tile placement, grid movement, and the text trees like I just mentioned. Ever-changing experience, all of the modes that you could ever want, solo, one-offs, and teams. And the pledge content breakdown here, as you can see, again, spending all that you want on how many collector's items and deluxifications. So, we'll kind of see. It's got $158 pledge level for the collectors, and the core is going to cost you $80 to get all the stretch goals as well. It looks like this is more of a mix between the two of them. This has all the deluxifications. This has some deluxifications. This has everything down below. So 5th player expansion, minis, and neoprene. I like the fact that you can separate those out, but that's still a pretty expensive game for non-miniature driven Euro pick up and deliver style of things. So that'd be my only concern. But again, how you want to spend your money is up to you, and you need to figure out what's worth it from a value standpoint for you. Perform your scans. Again, they kind of give you the most generic overview of these actions. Monsters are going to emerge based on the tile explorations. You're going to have the upgrading of the ships as well as the crew, plundering and wastelands, cities along the way. And there's going to be quadrants essentially that you're going to be plundering because there's going to be a plunder value that as you do that, the plunder value goes down. It becomes harder to plunder. And once you plunder enough in a quadrant, you can no longer plunder there. And so that's going to be something you're going to have to do. You're going to have head-to-head take that, as well as there's going to be this little mystery vault that's going to be something you need to find the coordinates, or there's going to be super good mystery sort of, secrets to go along with it. So there you go. Maps, enemies, bad guys, treasures, everything along those lines. Solo mode, can't speak to it. The rules are relatively straightforward. They're relatively compact. It's a relatively easy read. So give that a look-see. Again, I would say 5 players in a game like this. I worry about the downtime and the turn-by-turn basis that could go with it. But, you can also separate the miniatures, which I always give kudos for. Neoprene mat looks freaking awesome. But this has to be, sort of something that you're loving in the first place. Tons of modules, tons of preview content, and a little bit of playthrough. So there you go. Again, it's funded. I saw a couple ads for it, so I knew it was coming on crowdfunding, but Magister Games, 38 grand. Give it a look-see. Click a Tree, the new Uwe Rosenberg game, 10 grand. Again, I covered this as one of my more anticipated ones, as I am a sucker, speaking of I have a type, for tile laying in general, and it gives me sort of a Calico-esque vibe. So this is one that I could see really having a high ceiling, but I just don't know, because sometimes with something like this, Verdant, you know, any of those games in that line, it's hard to tell which ones are going to be the super good ones, pattern building and the core gameplay loop, and which ones you're going to feel a little bit rote and repeat after 2 or 3 plays. I'm looking at you, Nocturne. And so that's going to be my main issue overall, as you're building your landscape, harvesting your fruit, planting trees in those patterns, and then reaping the harvest that goes along with them as you unlock sort of these rows and lines of things that are going to help you get the end game scoring in the first place. So a few stretch goals here, which is actually a surprise. Mostly deluxifications though, so that's not too bad. Like I mentioned, planting trees, gardens, reaping the patterns that you're sowing in the first place of these 7 different fruits. So, I mean, I think it just looks kind of cool. These are the task strips that are going to get in your way, and then to fill them and remove the strips, you have to get certain patterns of trees, but you're going to be having to compete because they might also now not allow you to do them at the same time. So how do you complete and compete in that manner? And interestingly enough, as we scroll down here, you can start to see the components and some of the wooden markers that are going to be used here as well. So that's maybe a little bit more of the price point that you're seeing, even though it is really only $26 for the base game and the wooden version is $47. The end game is actually triggered by sort of a Yeager sale, if you're familiar with that cooperative game in that sense, is because what you have to have is you have to have the number past the number. And so what you're doing is you're slowly moving them across these lanes. And after you get, say, 5 above the 5, that is what triggers the game, or 6 above the 6, or, you know, 3 above the 3. That's what's going to trigger it to see who has the most points at the end. So I think this is something that I really think people are going to sleep on, and I could see being a really good hit. But I've seen a couple of these as well that are little indie games that I can think of that funded on crowdfunding, even like GameFound 1 or 2, that I said, oh, this could be something really good, and it ended up being a little bit convoluted. There were a couple abstracts that were, you know, thematic incorporations that I remember. So, here you go, how to win, right? Getting your advantages as you make your bit down your board, how to play, rulebook that I just showed you, and you'll have it before the end of the year. So this is on my wish list right now, just to be, you know, having on my radar and to be interested in, because I could see it making some waves this end of year. But the question is, right now, if you're looking at it, really you're getting it more from the wooden components than anything else. So anyway, give it a look-see, click a tree. Again, not really sure about the name, but it's got 11 grand, so give it a look-see. Yes, I will take webcomic creators creating a random party game for 100 Alex. If you've seen this before, well, you've seen it again. And this one is, well, talking about gallbladders and passing stones and playing cards to match to give other people stones, but then having stones be given or obtained or take that, or discarding people's cards or stealing cards from their hand and causing them to gain stones, lose stones, or block stones. So if that intrigues you from another organ standpoint from the creator of Awkward Yeti, that is what you've got going on here. A few stretch goals if they get it, and well, you'll see what they are when they get released. So that's kind of the general frame of things, right? A couple different decks that you're utilizing as you pass and go. They give you a little bit of the different types of cards that you'll be utilizing here. Passes, blocks, ultrasounds, endoscopies. That's endoscopies, not endoscopies. Bilirubin, cholesterol. Again, all giving you slightly different powers. The bile cards that you're going to be passing and using to give stones. The super bile cards are going to do the same thing, but a little bit easier. Again, it is what it is. So $30 is going to get you a copy of the base game, and $50 if you really want 2 of them, and $100 if you want to get, well, a bunch of the other stuff previously. So, I mean, there you go. Gallbladder themed party game. Never thought those words would come out of my mouth, but there you go. Yonmoque Hex. I cover all his games, folks. All of these abstract games. This is a tile laying abstract game where you have double-sided component tiles, 1 blue and 1 white, and you're going to be using a checkers-like movement system where you can move basically 1 space in any orthogonal direction, but your own pieces as your own colors count as part of that movement, so you can move from one end to the other. And the winning of this game means that you have to move to obtain 4 in a row. If you place, as you're placing them down, because you're allowed to place them as your action, then that does not count as the 4 in a row. You actually have to move into a 4 spot, which gives your opponent a chance to counter in that way. And if you ever get 5 in a row, you actually lose. Light little abstract game from Mr. Yamamoto here. Again, 32 created. I've covered a bunch of them. He does a lot of the ceramics. You get 2 limited edition here ones, either the white one or the yellow one. And that's what it is, right? The basic moves, the consecutive tile movement that I mentioned. The placement doesn't trigger flipping. Moving does trigger flipping though, and that's going to be how you're going to turn those pieces from your color to your opponent's color, and then placing them along the lines. If you think this game is simple, well, this is a complex strategy game like all of his, so it's probably going to be a lot thinkier and a little bit more analysis paralysis prone. You can typically get them in different sizes and different shapes, so there you go. Everything that you want to know, and a little abstract that you're not going to see anywhere else. Liege Games, tell them I sent you. Okay, truth be told, I was going to do this one earlier in the video, but there are so many freaking games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, 10 because these last two are very similar. But 22,000 25th Century Games' import collection. I personally, after this video airs next week, will be having a video talking about the second biggest one on this from a physical standpoint, Intent to Kill. It's freaking fantastic. If you like social deduction, only you don't want it to be super dry, you get the advanced mode with Intent to Kill. It's freaking amazing. You know, I've already got 2 games ready here in January, 3 or 4 if you include the CMON ones that finally delivered, that could be potentially at the end of the year on people's lists of just these are my top games. And Intent to Kill is really that good. I've had Kabuki Tricks on my radar for a while. I've had Yellow House on my radar for a while. I've also had Neko Syndicate on my radar for a while, just of games that I've been aware of and want to be interested in. I'll start with Intent to Kill though, because it's actually the first one up here before the First Tsar. And it's a 60-minute or less. It's actually probably closer to 45 minutes. You can even maybe skim it down to 30, depending on how analysis paralysis prone you are. But one person is the detective, one person is the murderer. And so what you have is this 4x4 grid, essentially, that you're going to be placing down these cards. And all these cards have several different characteristics. And you basically get to ask, or, you know, get 2 actions on your turn, one of which is asking questions to your opponent. And they ask to answer truthfully about what the characteristics are of the murderer. And you're going to have, like, probably, I don't know, something like 20 of these different cards, 24 of these cards on the board. And so they're all going to have different combinations of those like 4 characteristics. And so you're going to be slowly using those yes or no questions to narrow it down. And you're going to be going, okay, well, I can ask everybody in the same square that question. But the reason you would do that is that you might actually have someone that's lying to you in that square, if they are the murderer, if they are the accomplice, or if they are the faction loyal to the murderer, as you're going and moving around. And they kill murder victims over the 5 rounds, because you're not only going to have to guess who the murderer is, you're also going to have the motive, because these motives are going to have patterns of how they're killing. And so you have to distinguish both of those as you're going along, but it's the murderer's job to distinguish that so that they can't do it. And the expansion content, the advanced mode, gives you more than just the 6 basic motives that you have in the first place. And it really is creative. Now, the advanced mode also offers several different other ways of playing in terms of the motive cards, the murderer cards, and the detective cards, which spice it up a little bit, allowing you to manipulate those powers a little bit more. The murderer cards advocating and giving a little bit more of a less cut and dry situation, because in the base game alone, it can be a little bit cut and dry in terms of what the straightforwardness is of the pure deduction, because that's really what it is. It's more pure deduction. And so if you kind of don't choose wisely at the beginning of the game, the detective has a lot easier job than the murderer, actually, surprisingly, I feel like. But then the detective cards are things that you're going to be gathering along the way that are going to give you one-time uses that you can sort of power up, whereas the murderer cards are going to give like slight variations or extensions of, say, like the motive card to make it a little bit more obscure for the detective to be able to find what that is on the murderer side of things. So they absolutely killed it with this. No pun intended, that it is a fantastic game. So when the Meeples and the Rainbow down here says that this is a really good game and could easily end up, oh no, sorry, wrong one. That is Game Boy Geek. Nope, yeah, right there. Right. It could easily end up on the top 10 of the year. I would agree with that sentiment right now. There's not a ton of content out there. Again, Dice Tower was one of the few people along with Game Boy Geek to cover this. And so I will have a video out here in the next week or so as well talking about it. Now we need to talk about the rest of them, starting with the First Tsar. So the First Tsar is a 2 to 3 hour, they say, 2 to 4 player with a little bit of area placement, if you will, as you're placing your troops, your workers in these separate areas. And if you are either the highest or not the highest, you're stacking their coins underneath of your individual workers. And when you move them out of those areas, they activate. And if you are not the highest, you get to return your coins that are underneath you and take some actions. If you are the highest, then everyone else gets to return their coins. You have to discard your coins and you get the special action of wherever you are located at. And you're going to be using these seal tokens in order to, well, mitigate and choose how many of these you can do on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis. This game is played over 4 rounds with special scoring after the 2nd and 4th round, as well as 3 phases in each of these 4 rounds. Trading, resource management, area majority scoring, though, at the end of each and every round. So a little bit more resource management area control than say anything else. Again, you're getting wooden upgrades to go along with it. The rule book is right there. A little bit of everything that you may be familiar with. So then we have the Yellow House. And the Yellow House is more of a two-player head-to-head trick-taking style game where you're going to be playing up to 5 rounds trying to win either the best of 3 of 5 or having 2 of these topic cards that may be the same color in your possession. And what you're doing is you're just playing sort of a war-style trick-taking game as you just try and outclaim your opponent. However, if you cannot outclaim your opponent, you are given a way to strengthen via the main board that you see in front of me. And what you're doing essentially is you are trying to outplay them with a color of a card that has not already been played that round to begin with. And if you cannot do so, well, then you have the ability to make a claim, to strengthen your claim, if you will, by actually moving your centerpiece up here by the number that is needed to make your card stronger. If in case you need to make it 3 stronger in order to surpass theirs, you would have to also discard 3 cards in order to do so. If you actually run out of cards in your hand, you actually win the claim as well if you can be able to play all of them to surpass your opponent. Again, rinse and repeat, 2-player trick-taking game in the lines of things as previously noted from the designer of Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard, which is a game that's been on my wanna play list now for a while. And so that's another completely different game than what they've got going on here on this page as well. And that leads us next to the Battle of Versailles. Again, another 2-player game with a completely different mechanical approach. And the Battle of Versailles is actually more of a 2-player war game from Salt and Pepper Games, who has done like 2 or 3 of these recently in the last couple of years. And again, this is a denser read, a denser rulebook, and denser dynamics. As you can see down below here in the quotes for a second from like Space Biff, really compares it more to a war game than anything else. Dice Tower, Thinker Themer, and Space Biff have all covered it. So I'm going to defer you to them to really get a better overview from that aspect, because it probably is potentially the most dense of the games on this page, especially mechanically speaking, comparatively, as a whole. Next up, Kabuki Tricks is a 3 to 5 player trick-taking game where you not only get to decide the high and the low cards, whether it's going to be highs that win the tricks, lows that win the tricks, trumps, offsuit trumps, things along those lines, but you're also going to have a Joker card dealt into your hand that's going to determine when you play it, not to actually win the trick, but then to choose how many tricks you think you're going to win, as well as determine what card is going to be left over in your hand, because you have 7 tricks that are going to be played on a round by round basis, including your 8 cards in your hand. And so when you decide to play your Joker card, it also allows you to dictate what card or what suit is going to be left in your hand at the end in order to, well, get, well, more points. And it's a beautiful looking game. I was just playing Lord of the Rings trick-taking tonight. Okay, Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game, so I will have a review out for that very shortly in the near future, but that's something to look at as well if you're a fan of trick-taking. Next up, La Habana. 13 action cards. Build as many buildings as you can with your action tokens and your actual like little wooden bricks. And it's a very straightforward, select 2 actions each round, gather those resources, build those buildings, and only have so many actions in the first place. The trick with this one, haha, no pun recently included there, but the difference with this is the initiative order on a round by round basis is actually going to be based on the action cards that you play, depending on how you decide to order them. They're all going to have numbers in the corner. It's going to determine, you know, like 45 based on the action cards of 4 and 5. Or you could play 6 and 7, or you could play 5 and 7, or 2 and 7. But the lower of the 2 is the digit of the initiative order, so you're always going to be having the lower of the 2 possible options for your initiative value. Now, you can build as many structures as you want on a turn-by-turn basis, but you can only build at the ends of your tableau at the far end or the far right, and you can take as many actions or build as many things as you want based on those 2 action cards that you can play, not necessarily in the order that was used for the initiative, but either order that's going to suit you more. Very solid tableau builder, and now we're going on to Neko Syndicate. 15 turns, moving your tracks along the missions, trying to complete as many as you can before the end of the game, utilizing not only your leaders, your minions, but also your accountants. The interesting twist on this game is you can actually see that you have sort of rows set up below the leader card, and what you're going to be doing is actually moving your leader down through 2 of these cards in order to take the actions that are represented on them in order to complete those objectives that I mentioned up here as you're traversing these 15 turns. And did I mention that it's actually done simultaneously so that you can all play along, but you're going to be doing those 2 phases of moving your command post coast, essentially, down through 2 different spaces, the areas that you're going below, essentially. And then you are meeting and adjusting, and you do this every time until you go down to the bottom level. And so as you're going along longer in the game, you're gonna have more chains, more combos, more ways to complete those quests until you do this a total of 15 times. Mission points and pyramid structure points are gonna be how you're scoring at the end of the game. Rinse and repeat on a round by round basis. Nice little card tableau with a, you know, physical vertical component there. So looks like something light, but very interesting. Then, I mean, it's Liar's Dice. I'm not talking about Liar's Dice. It's just a very pretty version. And I've seen a lot of people pick up like Liar's Dice from overseas because they like the overseas, you know, Asian or European versions more than the American bland blah version. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that we've seen someone else pick it up and make it prettier because, I mean, it's a classic game as a whole. Then we're going on to Take a Seat. 1 to 6 players, though, as a card-driven with your own personal theater board style game. So as you're sitting down, you're actually going to have these theater boards in between you, and you're going to be taking one from the left and one from the right and applying them to your area. Then you're either going to be using the usher to either gain victory points or to use the ability that they offer. The usher will allow you to flip, manipulate, and fill in different ways on these boards as you're going, and will activate during the 3rd and 4th phases of the game. You're going to have majorities, you're going to have 4 objectives that are going to be present at the beginning of the game, and after you do this 14 rounds, well, you see who scores the most. Automa as well for all you solo junkies, and well, plenty of coverage in that regard in addition. And then last up, Cat Days and Wolf Days. I believe the same game, just with the animal theme of your choosing, because those are big hits on crowdfunding actually. And it's super straightforward. You get 5 cards, you have 7 days of the week in front of you, and you lay cards out until you fill up all those days. And once you fill them up, game's over. You count your tableau and see how many points you can get. That is it, right? Whoosh. 25th Century Games, killing it. Again, I'd say Intent to Kill is definitely the one that I am most interested in, and actually it's the one I asked Chad when he said, hey, are you interested in covering it? Then I would probably have to go as a whole, maybe, you know, First Tsar. If it wasn't a full 3-hour game, I'd actually be more interested in that. Yellow House looks interesting, just as a quick game, but not sure it had the long-staying ability for me. And then again, Battle of Versailles. If this plays as quickly as it looks, even though I'd argue that the rulebook is probably longer than it takes to play, minutes-wise, that'd be my biggest fear, but that would be easily 2A to 2B with First Tsar, you know, probably the Neko Syndicate, or a Yellow House there as 4th. So there you go. Tons of games, 25th Century, importing them all. And you can pick one and sort it out accordingly. Get it in your collection. Quebec 1759, the 50th Anniversary Deluxe Limited Edition. It's a war game. I saw that it launched last week after I did my crowdfunding roundup. I wanted to make sure I was including it for all of you big war gamers that watch me on crowdfunding. But again, I can't speak to you how or what this is doing. I mean, it must be a classic, right? If it's been around for 50 years and people are still willing to support it. So, you can see what the old editions look like and the new edition looks like. Okay, there you go. That's all I'm going to say. Plenty of, well, other games that you can get in addition. So, wargaming, not my thing, but it's a game and I'm covering it on crowdfunding. So there you go. Know Thyself, the game of self-discovery, $26,000. It's sort of like an apples to apples, only with introspection and human psychology as trying to get your archetype matching up to what you think and what other people think and comparing the two. Because essentially what they said is they got 104 different unique archetypes that they mentioned here, and they basically make you apples to apples guess. Essentially, you draw a card, draw a trait, and you basically choose a number that aligns with how you view yourself, like on a 1 to 10 scale, and then others rate you, and you talk about it and compare. So that's it, right? Cool. However, if this art looks a little wonky, yeah, this is all Mid-Journey art. So again, I see people clamoring and complaining all the time online about not supporting stuff, but with this and Foxpaw, people never put their money where their mouth is, or at least it seems like it, because, I mean, this has over $20,000. The art's attractive, but it is AI, so say what you will, and they've got some stretch goals here that they're putting some slight deluxifications on the card. There you go, $26,000, check it out. Next up, Dice Tower, GameFound, 2025, their 23rd year. I didn't actually realize it was 23 years. $84,000, it'll probably be well over $100,000 by the time you guys are watching this. They have a bunch of pledge levels that I don't know if they've done this in the past. I'm assuming they have, because I don't think this is anything new either. I just don't pay attention always to these things, where they basically just have like a $60 and $110 level where they just say, hey, all this money is just going to support us. So that's the big one. Otherwise, they have the usual promo packs right here, and they split all of the good games that you want in your collection between all of them. So if you really want the ones that you want, you end up trading or buying them on the secondary market. I think I actually just bought the Bullet one from last year from someone else for like $7 or $8 online on Board Game Geek. So, you know, if you don't have the money to spend $60 on some promos that you will only use basically never in your collection, because again, we all know promos, right? You think you're going to use promos, and then promos get thrown into the box. You never actually use them for the 2 times you play that game in the whole year of 2025, and then rinse and repeat, right? So just teasing. But I know people will say, okay, I do this to support them, not to actually get the promo value worth, which is always an interesting discussion point for me, because I see people on crowdfunding regularly, like that is the main thing. Chris, I need value. Chris, I need value. Chris, I need value. And the value they're going to say in this situation is that it's supporting the Dice Tower as the largest of the board game channels, period. So again, it's for you. Like I said at the beginning of the video, do what you feel like is good value. Here's a bunch of stretch goals, going a bunch of places, bunch of extra videos, a bunch of extensions. And truth be told, that comment at the beginning, if you're watching that part as well as this part, I didn't actually realize that this was launching when I made that comment, because these are filmed on separate days. Spoilers. And there you go. Digital awards, promo packs, plushies. Plushies kind of cool, actually. Yeah, give it a look-see. And I'm just a little surprised they're over on GameFound. I think they've used Kickstarter up until this point, but also I'm not surprised because it's lesser of a cut comparatively to Kickstarter. So yeah, I think that's why a lot of the bigger ones have moved over, or at least the main reason some of the bigger ones have done in the first place. So there you go, Dice Tower. Next up, Pixels and Polygons. This is the game company behind Assault on Doomrock, with their upcoming next expansion for that. $10,000 of the $14,000 funding goal here, with this sort of more Euro pseudo-esque worker placement game where you're trying to basically create, through those mechanisms, 2 video games and the components that go along with that. From a Euro aspect of things, as you're moving your pieces along these hex-based grids in order to gather your actions that will offer a slight twist on the worker placement in the first place, gathering those resources in order to upgrade your games in different ways to score the most points as a completed work of art by the end. And the game cards, the upgrade cards, the player boards, and all of the pieces that you're going to be needing, the boards, the modules, and the hex-based grids that you're going to be going along, that you're also going to be having to navigate with your opponents at the same time. Popping over to the rulebook here, you can see the components that you're going to be dealing with, the quality, the fans, the upgrade cards, the genre, all of those things, including trophies and hype. We don't know anything about hype, playing a little bit in there, the wink wink nod nod situation. And then you start to plan out your projects with your loading bars one at a time as you go along, taking your actions, including moving your developer and discarding or playing an upgrade card, as well as crunching, gaining 2 bugs or red tile, but may move further or may move 2 different developers. So high risk, high reward, right? Get a bonus, get a curse at the same time. Your upgrade cards, your cards that are just going to give you all of the things that you need in order to modify, tweak, and make your game the best compared to others. They give you a little bit of how your developers are going to be moving over these hexes. You're showing right here how you're going to be moving these developers over the hexes, and how you're going to be either navigating the small or the large, depending on the space that they will occupy, the resources and the iconography to go along with them there, and everything else to make it more modular along the way. So there you go. That's everything. And what is the reward? Actually, all the way back up here, 1 version of it for $40, and this does include stretch goals, but not shipping. So there you go. 10 grand. Give it a look-see. Pixels and Polygons. Next up on GameFound, Game Barrett's action-packed double feature here, solo game of the month. I covered a fair bit of last year as well. He's still at it, and you are getting a combination of Harsh Shadows and Welcome to Reckoning. Welcome to Reckoning is the main one, but you're getting this in a combined box. I actually think Harsh Shadows is out previously, but we're going to focus on the other one. And so what you're doing in Welcome to Reckoning is you have this deck of event cards, and you're going to be playing 5 in a single round, and you're going to be basically just moving your character token across these cards, going from left to right, resolving them as you go along, and then you're going into the losses phase where bad things are going to happen, or you're going to have to reconcile what you did in the first round. Asymmetric character cards, 4 location cards that you're going to be dealing, navigating, utilizing, and then your own deck of cards in order to action mitigate as you're traveling along these events on a round by round basis in order to escape in the first place. Tentacles and fire are actually going to be threatening you. You win if you have 4 of a kind, no fire or tentacles at the warehouse, or you get the wagon to the warehouse and you get to the warehouse with your 4 of a kind without losing those cards in the first place. So really an action card management system with a tab below that you're utilizing as you're going along, because these buildings may get invaded by tentacles, they may actually get on fire, and everything else bad that could happen along the way. So then there's Harsh Shadows as a solo spy driven version of this in a different way. But there you go. Kind of cool. Only you get to be agent versus spy in this one with different locations as you go along. And I did actually go back and look at this one. 2021 is when Harsh Shadows was put out. So you're getting a combination of one of their previous games with one of their new ones in a solo driven manner. I'm not going to cover Harsh Shadows because it is already out, but you're going to be manipulating in the same lines of things with slightly different aspects and avenues and mechanics as you do while the spy versus agent, right? Tools, evidence, and discovery going along the way. So that's it. There you go. Action-packed solo game of the month. Then last up this week, we're talking about Deckay, the game. This is like a PvP style deck building game, only it's going to be more of a deck drawing game, I believe. What you're doing essentially is you're either playing on a team or you're just going straight up King of the Hill as you're trying to, well, attack your opponents with the cards that you have that are going to give you ranges, damages, avoids, ammo, bombs, special abilities, anything that you might recognize from a battle scenario war-esque vibe, right? And you're going to have a certain amount of life points represented by your character card with bullets, and then as you get damaged, you are going to be eliminated when you run out. On your turn, draw 2 cards and play them to do damage. These are going to have ranges on them, and you're just going to be numbered in a system 1 to the number of many players that you're playing with, and then that is going to determine your range. So if you are player number 1, you could hit player 3, or you could go down from 5 to 1 to hit 4 instead of a range 2 that way. Rinse and repeat. Last one standing, unless you're playing on a faction, because you can choose teams, wins in that regard too. There are abilities available to you when you're defeated, especially in the faction mode, that will wreak havoc potentially on other players. And then there is the hardcore extreme mode, which adds event challenge cards into the deck as a whole. And when they're pulled, they get put face up and change the rules of the game or the dynamics that are out there in the first place to make things even crazier. So there you go. Immediate shipment reward. Ooh, they already have stuff ready. You can get 64 people already doing this for $30, collector's edition game cards, and the regular edition to not get it as quick. Well, actually, this says August 2024. Whoops, that didn't get changed. August 2025, maybe? Was this a cancel relaunch, or was this just a big editing boo-boo? Well, we'll see. But it's got to get funded first, so it's got 3,200 of its 5,100. So if you're interested in this heavy take that multiplayer action card game, Deckay, check it out. Crowdfunding roundup this week, and as always, if you made it to this part, I did a little bit of exclusive, my thoughts on who should get and what you should get backing wise last week on Patreon, and I'll be making that a regular feature of things, not just the like once a month, don't back all the big stuff sort of situation as well. Support me on Patreon, help me help you. That's all I got. I will be having hopefully 2 or 3 reviews come out this coming week. So tune in, Intent to Kill being one of them, a few surprises, maybe a Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game as well. I may have a copy of Zombicide White Death. I may have a copy of the Metal Gear Solid game in addition. And we got some Justice League Dark as well as a multi-game review video coming up in the near future. Games that are good, but it's going to be a new feature. Multi-game video situation where I tell you these games are really good, but maybe there's 1 or 2 things that's going to prevent you from wanting to get them or preventing me from fully and utterly endorsing them in some way, shape, or form. So that will be coming out in the very near future. As always, check out my top 10 of, well, and top 25 of 2024, which came out earlier this week. And then maybe next week I'll fit in there one of the videos because I did anticipated crowdfundings. I think I haven't anticipated expansions and anticipated just retail as well, or arriving. One of those 2. I don't think I did all of those. I've done at least one of those, maybe 2 of those. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. See, it's one of those days, one of those nights, and one of those weeks. So that's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Only one soccer game this weekend. Last weekend, the 9-year-old had 2 games over a 3-hour span. This weekend, he doesn't have any. The 10-year-old has 1 game. And then the following week, the 9-year-old has 2 games back to freaking back. I'm not happy with this organization. We have not had good luck with these organizations. So, I don't know. That's all I got. Playing some games tomorrow. Peace out. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Oh, I have a media kit now. Ooh, I made myself a media kit. That's a sell sheet, essentially, that publishers ask for all the time. And they say, hey, what are your stats? Hey, what are your So I finally made one. I'm a big boy now.